Most of you, more than likely, have found me and this webinar as a result of the Nourishers. Many of you may be aware that it's an online platform which specializes in providing, well, all lifestyle and well-being related services, such as what I'm going to present to you today. That could be mental, physical, nutritional, spiritual, and any other range of topics that which are designed for personal wellness, personal development. And the Nourishers is there to provide you with the opportunity to allow you to pick and choose from a wide range and a wide variety of services, as well as experts who can help you in any specific area that it is you want to improve yourself in. So whatever that might be, offerings include wellness programs for companies, schools, kids, individuals, groups, you name it. So you know where to go if you are interested in exploring a little bit deeper, either into what it is that I offer or into any other field or any other specialization or any other coach or facilitator. Just check out the Nourishers. All right. So, ladies and gentlemen, I'm not going to be doing a visual presentation. You're not going to be seeing me showing you pictures. I want you to get to know me. And that's why I'm going to be doing a talk. I'm going to be introducing you to me and also to what it is that I do. So at any point in time, please don't hesitate to ask a question if you have it, and I will try to get to it when I can. So welcome to Mind Mastery. If you don't know who I am, I'm Yuri Nunes, and I have been exploring the mind and mindfulness for, well, almost 15 years now. So before I delve into what Mind Mastery is, I think I'd like to detail my journey into my learning more about the mind and why I chose to go down this route. And like most stories that people tend to deliver at presentations, most of these stories tend to be as a result of a challenge in their life, an experience that was quite, well, for lack of a better word, challenging. And this challenge triggered a need to discover answers, to search for answers, to explore new concepts and ideas. And this is too where my story began, a challenging life experience. My story begins with my mom, who was suffering from bipolar. She, at this point in time in our lives, she'd gone off her medication, and the medication that she went on afterwards, the secondary medication, it wasn't working very well. It wasn't providing the support that she needed. It didn't work. And slowly but surely, she was spiraling down into greater and greater disorientation, suffering, depression, anxiety. It was pretty rough. And she was even dealing with physical sensations, that she couldn't explain. I mean, she had literally become skin and bones. Everything that I'd seen in movies before of other people, where I was like, oh, wow, that's terrible. How could someone have gone through that? My mom was going through exactly that. She experienced these physical sensations and this pain that the doctors couldn't explain. According to them, there was nothing wrong with her. Physically speaking, she was absolutely fine, and they couldn't explain it. And this is when I began to ask my very first question. If it wasn't physical, if all the physical sensations and the pain that my mother was describing that she was feeling and experiencing, if it wasn't real, according to what the doctors were saying, well, then there was only one obvious conclusion. It had to have been mental. Now, in witnessing and in trying to support my mom as she went through this terrible, terrible time in her life, I felt pretty useless because, well, there was seemingly nothing I could do. Regardless of all the time that I spent with her, she seemed to be in like this constant daze. She was basically like a zombie. She was in pain and she was in agony. But sometimes what I found was when I guided her into a visualization, I discovered that this seemed to bring her a sense of peace and a sense of calm. And that she was mostly calm and really relaxed when I was guiding her through this visualization. I was just repeating what I was thinking of as I imagined her walking through a forest or with her feet in a river, or she was swimming under a beautiful waterfall, whatever it might have been, I discovered that she was able to relax. The pain that she described she felt before, she wasn't experiencing anymore. And again, this made me curious. Why would she feel better when I simply guided her through a visualization of a beautiful, calm, peaceful, and a serene space? I mean, technically, she's just imagining it in her mind, but it seemed to have an impact on her in the present moment. And it seemed to have an impact on her physical pain. It seemed to make it disappear. It seemed to calm her. It seemed to make her feel better. So this is where I asked the second question. Why? Why is this physical pain that she claimed to have been experiencing disappearing simply by me guiding her through a visualization? So I'm not going to delve too deeply into the pain and the suffering that my mom had to endure, but needless to say, she is better now. So it's good news. So essentially, my mother's painful experience is the reason that I embarked on this journey. It's the reason that I embarked on this journey of the mind, trying to better understand how our mind impacts our physical, how it impacts our experiences, and the ways in which we enjoy and the ways in which we live in this life. Now, I wasn't unharmed by this experience that I witnessed my mom going through, because eventually, a couple of months later, after she got better, I had my first anxiety attack. I had no idea what it was. I woke up from a night of partying with my friends, sleeping on the living room floor, and my heart was beating uncontrollably, like I'd never felt it before. And I was really scared because I had no idea what was going on. I literally thought I was having a heart attack. Once I was able to calm down, I eventually spoke to someone and came to realization that what I had experienced was a panic attack, an anxiety attack. Now, these experiences may seem to most to be the type of experiences that I would regret, but I don't. I don't regret it at all. If anything, I'm extremely thankful to have had these experiences because it's these experiences that put me on the path that I'm currently on today. Teaching all the various methods and all the techniques and the ideas that I learned through exploring myself, better trying to understand and improve myself. Ultimately discovering that it was the way that I was thinking and it was my inability to manage and master my own mind that was causing my anxiety. And overall, my negative interpretation of the world around me, that's what was causing my fear, my depression, my anxiety, whatever mental, emotional, negative states I was experiencing, I came to realize was because of me, because of the way that I was thinking. And the realization at the end of the day is that our experiences and all those things that happen around us or even to us, is that how we perceive these things, how we choose to see them, will ultimately determine the experience that we will have. Now, I've been free of anxiety for over 10 years now. I've conquered my own anxiety and I'm on the way to mastering my mind. I wouldn't say that I've mastered it completely. I still have a lot to learn, but I do live a more balanced, more peaceful, and a more joyful life, regardless of what negative experiences may happen around or to me, because I realize it is how I choose to react to these experiences. It's how I choose to react to these outside influences that will determine how much at peace I am with them. But if I'm honest, if I had the support that the Nourishers provide, if I had access to one-on-one sessions with coaches like myself or many of the coaches that you can find on the Nourishers, I'm sure that I would have developed and improved myself and overcome my difficulties a lot quicker. So the question you may be asking is, how did I do this? How did I come to this stage in my life? What did I explore? What am I exploring now? Because I guess that's why you're here, right? You want to understand mind mastery. You want to understand how to master your mind, and you want to understand how it can help you. Well, I'll start with a simple question, which I anticipate many of you may now know the answer to. And if you feel comfortable answering it, I invite you to do so, typing it or putting up your hand. And here's the question. What is the most important muscle that we have? If anyone feels comfortable answering, don't worry, there's no right, there's no wrong. Discovering and being brave enough to ask a question. So I'll ask the question again. What do you guys think is the most important muscle that we have? I think it goes without saying that it's the mind. The mind is the most important muscle that we have. If you think about it, it's the muscle, it's the brain, it's the muscle that controls all the other muscles. And more time working on the muscles of their body. So here's the next question. How much time do you spend exercising, training, or developing your mind? I guess there's another question you'd probably be asking is, how do you exercise or develop your mind? Because that's not really something we're taught how to do, is it? When we go to school, we're always taught how to exercise our physical body. We're always taught we got to do PE, physical education, and that's important for our health. But what's more important than training the mind? Right? So that's what we're going to delve a little bit deeper into, better understanding what that is. So as I mentioned, most people have a decent idea of what they need to do if they want to exercise the muscles of their body. But most have no idea what they need to do if they want to exercise their mind. Well, that's what I did. And that's what I try to do every day. And that's what I teach people how to do for themselves. I learned what I needed to do in order to start exercising, training, and develop my mind. And it started with a simple book called Mind Power. I remember it standing out to me as I was walking past the bookstore. This was many years ago. I was walking past and it was sitting there on the shelf, and the cover just kind of called out to me. And I went straight in and I bought it immediately. I just knew this is what I need to understand the power of the mind. And this led me to more books, to more knowledge, to more teachers, to more countless exercises and modalities that I've been exploring over my whole life. And now, ultimately, with what I've compiled and learned thus far, I've put into a course, a one-on-one or an online course, whatever suits my clients' needs. But I've got another question. What happens when you train the muscles of the body? And this is an important question because if we understand that it's important to train the muscles of our body, then obviously, inversely, we also obviously understand that it's important to train the muscles of the mind. But the same question applies. What happens when you train the muscles of the body? Again, I'm going to put it out there. If anyone, there we go. I got a hand up. Samiha, go ahead. Feel free to, there we go.
Yeah, and they become stronger.
There you go. It's a, when you exercise the muscles of the body, they become stronger. So there's a physical exercise related principle. Thank you, Samiha. Appreciate that. Thank you for the courage to actually answer. There's an exercise related principle which I learned and which stayed with me during my studies of sports science. We need to overload the muscles in order for them to adapt. So what does this mean? So when we go to the gym, we lift heavy weights or we push our bodies past their natural comfort zone, past what they're capable of doing. And what happens is generally we exercise to failure, right? We overload our muscles. And then at night, what happens is that our muscles realize that was hard. And the muscles realize they need to change. They need to adapt. They need to grow in order to better manage when they're placed under the same strain next time. So the muscles adapt, the muscles grow, the muscles get stronger. Your muscle fibers increase in numbers and in size. So that's what happens when you exercise the muscles of the body. They adapt. You overload the muscles have to adapt. Now, the same principle applies to the muscle of the mind. If you train the mind, at times it'll be difficult, it'll be challenging. And this, in essence, will be you overloading the mind's capabilities based on what it's used to. But inevitably, Just like with one's body, the mind will adapt, the mind will get stronger. It's exactly the same. All right. Reem has just posted a comment. It adapts to certain challenges and physical situations. Exactly. It's exactly that. Just put in another set of words. That's exactly what happens. And remember, our brain, our mind is a muscle too, but we spend such little time exercising it. So I guess the next question is, what can we do to train our mind? What can we do to help it grow? What can we do to evolve our mind and to allow it to get stronger? So there's numerous kinds of practices. I'm going to mention just a few, from meditation to mindfulness to visualization to radical discontinuity. I know most of you are probably going, huh? Radical discontinuity, what's that? Well, that's something I can detail later. If anyone has a question about it, I can touch on that a little bit more. But essentially, there are a countless number of exercises that you can do, because essentially, mental training is any exercise that allows us to use our minds in a new or a focused way. So allow me to give you an idea of the effectiveness of something like visualization. There are countless studies on the effectiveness of a visualization program. I'm going to try to maybe mention one or two. So the first one, some of you may be familiar with this, is a study in Australia. I think it was done in the 1990s. And basically, in this particular study, what they did was they had 15 basketball players and they broke them up into 3 groups of 5. They took the first group of 5. Well, firstly, they took all 3 groups and they tested their physical skills. So they tested their ability to throw 3-pointers. They tested their basketball skills. They wanted to see what's their baseline. How good are they if we test them in the beginning? All right, then they broke them up into those 3 groups I mentioned before, 3 groups of 5 basketball players. The first group, they said, all right, you guys are going to have to play basketball every single day. You're going to have to throw 3-pointers. You're going to have to dribble. You're going to have to physically play every single day for the next 3 to 4 weeks. That's all you're going to do, play basketball. Great. They went on and they did that. The second group, they said, okay, you guys, we don't want you to do anything about basketball. We'd like you guys to do nothing related to basketball. Do whatever you want. Enjoy yourselves. Don't play it on PlayStation. Don't even think about it. Don't even watch it on TV. Okay, great. They went off on their 4 weeks and that's what they did. And the third group, they said, we'd like you guys to come into a room with us, a dark room where there's no potential for distractions. And we're going to guide you through a visualization of yourselves physically playing it. Not physically playing it, but imagining that you're physically playing it, just in your mind. You're closing your eyes and we're going to guide you through, oh, you're bouncing the basketball. Oh, Michael Jordan is there and you kind of dribble around him and you throw 3-points, you dunk over his head and you're feeling what it feels like. It feels successful. It feels like, whoa, I just dunked on Michael Jordan. And that's all that they did. They just visualized it for 4 weeks. Okay, so the 4 weeks passed. They brought them back and they said, okay, cool. So let's test you guys again. Let's see, has there been any improvements or have there been any drop in improvements? And of course, with the first group, there was an obvious improvement. They played physically for 4 weeks and they improved by something like 30% in their skills in comparison to the base levels. The second group, who didn't play anything at all, obviously had declined in their skills. They declined by almost 20%. And the group who just imagined themselves playing basketball had improved in their skills by something like 20 to 25%. Not exactly the same amount as those who physically played, but pretty much almost exactly the same. That in itself is shocking. A group of individuals who didn't physically play any basketball had improved in their skills. How is this possible? I'll touch on another quick little one. There was another study where they wanted to identify if individuals visualized themselves doing an exercise, would there be an inverse improvement in strength? Could we improve these people's strength just by them imagining themselves exercising? Because that sounds crazy, right? I mean, you've always been taught you have to physically go to the gym in order to get strong. You have to physically lift the weights. So they wanted to find out, can these guys get stronger if they just imagine themselves exercising? And lo and behold, yes. So they obviously asked them to imagine themselves exercising certain muscles that they wouldn't accidentally exercise over the course of their day. So one of them was the pinky finger. They had to imagine themselves lifting weights against resistance in their minds with their pinky, because it's not a finger you tend to use very often. So that's a reliable indication of whether there's an improvement or not. And yes, there was an improvement in the strength. They also did another muscle in the body, the elbow flexor, but that is a muscle you might tend to use over the course of the day. So if you think about this, what's the only obvious conclusion? Is that the mind can't tell the difference. The brain can't tell the difference. What tells the difference is your awareness, your consciousness. All right. Some people believe consciousness is created within the mind as a result of chemical processes that happen. Scientific evidence. No scientist knows for sure what consciousness is. In my personal opinion, I believe the consciousness is separate from the brain. And basically, it is your ability to master your awareness, master your level of consciousness, that will determine the level of effectiveness of your brain. So if you do a visualization, your brain doesn't know you're not really doing it. If you do a visualization and you not only imagine it, but you feel what it feels like. I mean, everyone can do that. Everyone can their hands. Maybe do it now. Let's do it now. I want you to close your eyes. Everyone's held a ball, maybe not a basketball, maybe a football, whatever you're familiar with. I want you to imagine you're holding it in your hands. And if you really imagine it, and you imagine your hands are kind of rushing and running over the surface of the skin of the ball, you might be able to feel the little bumps. If it's a basketball, you might be able to feel how rubbery it is. If it's a football, you might be able to feel how leather it is. And I want you to imagine you're kind of pushing on it. You'll be able to imagine you're feeling the pressure of that ball. Maybe you can even smell the rubbery scent if it's a basketball. Maybe you can even smell the leathery scent. Nice. So that's just a simple little test. All right. If we had a little bit more time, I would have taken a lot more time to guide you into that. So it might have been a little bit easier. But the point I'm trying to make is that if you can convince yourself through visualization that what you're imagining is real, the brain can't tell the difference. So what it does is it releases the necessary neurochemicals to make the necessary physiological changes, because it thinks, oh, look, he's exercising. Oh, I guess I'm going to have to make the changes because he was really struggling in that, even though you're imagining that you were struggling. And there's one final example I'll give. If any of you are aware of Dr. Joe Dispenza, you may have heard of this person's name. He's pretty well known in the meditation field, and he's also a scientist as well. He was an individual, and try to keep it brief, but he was an individual who had an accident that he was running at an ultra marathon, a triathlon. He got hit by a car, and he completely damaged his back. His vertebrae were completely damaged. And the doctor said if he stood up, as a result of gravity and the pressure applied to the vertebrae, he would completely destroy his nerves in his back, and he would not be able to walk for the rest of his life. So he had to lie down. And the doctors were recommending that he have very invasive surgery with pins placed into his back. It wasn't just one doctor, it was 4 doctors who said the same thing. So he had the other opinion, and they all said the same. But he wasn't of the opinion that that's what he needed. And he decided, nah. Now, mind you, he was a chiropractor, so he did understand the spine. He wasn't just an average Joe. And he decided to use visualization. And as he describes it, if you're interested in learning more about it, check out the documentary called Heal, which details how people heal themselves through various practices outside of the traditional medical fields. He described, Mr. Dr. Joe Dispenza, how he used visualization to re-knit his spine. He just imagined it was healing itself. He described how the first time he tried, it was impossible for him to stay focused on that. Every time he tried to imagine his spine re-knitting, the idea or the image of a wheelchair popped into his head. And that's not abnormal. Most of us haven't mastered our mind to the point where we can focus on a single image because we don't know how to do that. We are slave to our minds. We're not masters of our minds. We're slave to distraction. And that's exactly what he was experiencing. But he was really dedicated and he persisted. And eventually, within 6 weeks, he was able to fully focus for however long he needed to visualize his spine reknitting itself, to kind of realigning, to the vertebrae kind of healing themselves and being fixed and strong and firm and supported. And lo and behold, a couple of weeks after that, he was walking. A couple of weeks after that, he was running. He was exercising. A couple of weeks after that, he was running his next triathlon. And again, of course, the doctors are like, what happened? This is insane. This isn't possible. We thought you would need invasive surgery with pins in your back. And he proved otherwise. So this is just an example of visualization. You know, these are simply just a few of the many examples where visualization was used to affect some change in the physical. And it's a skill that we can all learn to get good at. And obviously, it's clearly one that works. So I've touched just on one example of an exercise, one example of a practice that we can all engage in to train and develop the mind. In this case, visualization. But the essence and the foundation of all of my practice, my current teachings, is mindfulness. I believe in order to develop a greater mastery of yourself and in turn your mind, for me, mindfulness is the key. So let me touch a little bit on what mindfulness is. It's a practice of intentionally bringing your awareness into the present moment without judgment. And it's a skill that you can develop through meditation and other forms of mindfulness training. Mindfulness is a state of active, conscious, open attention to the present. You're just focusing on what is true in this moment. It can be described as observing your thoughts and your feelings without judging them as good or bad. Whenever I think of mindfulness, it reminds me of a great quote. It's a quote that I love from a pretty phenomenal and maybe a surprising movie. You might find it surprising that I mentioned this as a movie. And this movie was filled with so much wisdom. And it's quite possible that your children are more familiar with this movie than you are. The movie was Kung Fu Panda. And this is the quote. Yesterday is history. Tomorrow is a mystery. And today is a gift. That's why they call it the present. So mindfulness reminds me very much about this quote because it's about recognizing that there's only ever a single moment where your true power lies. There's only ever a single moment where you control how you perceive any experience. And that moment is now. Mindfulness is about becoming more present to the now. Because when we live focused too much on the worries of the future, the unknown, those things that we cannot control or anticipate, then we're living in the future, and this can cause experiences of worry, panic, or anxiety because we're trying to live in a space that we have no control over. There's no way we can control the future because we have no idea what's going to happen. Equally so, when we live too focused in the past, reliving the past, guilt-ridden or shameful or angry about something that has already happened, well, we're still living there in the past. We're living in that past moment, a moment that can't be changed. Yet still, some of us are stuck there. And this too can draw us deeper and deeper into fear and depression. So the goal of mindfulness is to develop a greater self-awareness. And in doing so, to learn to recognize and to see yourself. Because as you become more aware in the present moment, you start to see the thinking that you have, the limiting thoughts that you have, the things that you think that are like, why am I thinking that? How does that serve me? You may even begin to start seeing your limiting beliefs, the things that you believe about yourself that are holding you back. You may even start to recognize conditioned behaviors that you always engage in that do not serve you. The way you react when someone says something, you react out of anger. The more mindful you are, the more you start to go, wait a minute, why am I reacting like this? You start to ask a very important question. Did they make me angry, or did I get angry? And this is a very, very important distinction, because most people don't ask that. Most people go, you made me angry. Most people like to say, you are the problem. And very few people look internally and go, what part did I play in that experience? And most people don't even change the words that they say, because if you just change the words that you say and you say, I got angry. We're not saying that your behavior was appropriate, because if their behavior was inappropriate, absolutely, you should acknowledge that. But it doesn't mean that they just have a remote control and they can just go, ooh, look, I'm going to make her angry now. And they're going to say what they need to say because they know it pushes your buttons. Because as long as you keep giving them that power, as long as you keep saying, you make me angry, that's what you're doing. You're giving them all the power. You're not taking your power back. You're not empowering yourself by saying, I got angry. What can I do to better understand why I got angry? And in doing that, how can I learn to let it go? So that next time they do exactly the same thing, you go, okay, that's your decision. That's up to you. It doesn't impact me. Doesn't matter what you choose to say or do. What matters is what I choose or say about myself. And that's where the real power lies. You can stop, or at least you can learn to stop getting in your own way. And you can start engaging in your thinking, and you can start engaging in thinking that better serves you, to develop a new, better serving thought, to develop new, better serving beliefs, and also, as a result, to find a greater sense of peace and calm, to learn how to manage your thinking and in turn, manage your stress, to reduce your anxiety, even reduce pain, or simply be more at peace with life and develop a greater sense of equanimity. So I'd like to tell a quick story before I finish off. And this story is a good exemplary story to demonstrate how limiting beliefs that we hold about ourselves, that we might be completely unaware of, that how these beliefs can hold us back from truly living, from truly engaging with life in the best possible way. And this story is called The Elephant and the Spike. Some of you may be aware of it. I love telling stories because stories are great visual representations of perhaps how we can understand a concept. So let me start with a story. So there was this baby elephant that was captured from the wild. It was taken to a circus because they wanted to be a circus elephant. And it was tied, a chain was tied to its leg, and the other end of the chain was hammered into the ground with a metal spike. And this baby elephant tried desperately to escape. It tried desperately to pull against this chain and the spike that was hammered into the ground, but it couldn't. It just wasn't strong enough. This chain was just too strong for it. And as the years passed, the elephant would keep trying as a young baby elephant, and it still couldn't. And eventually, 1 year later, 2 years later, the elephant didn't even try anymore. And as it got older, this elephant became a huge bull elephant, monstrous, powerful, strong. And all it needed to do was a flick of its paw was to do this, and that spike would fly out of the ground. But it never did. It never even tried. And why, one may ask? Because it didn't think that it could. Because as a child, it had tried so often, and it created this belief that it was impossible. It was impossible to remove the spike out of the ground because for the 6 months that it was a baby calf elephant, it had tried and it had failed. So it created this belief that it was impossible. And this became a belief that it believed as an adult, which was clearly not true, but it didn't know any better. You don't know what you don't know. And if you don't explore a practice of self-awareness, a practice of looking internally and being more aware of your thoughts, of your beliefs, of your actions, you're not going to know what's holding you back. You're not going to know what's causing your current situation in life because you're not aware to it. And the story of the elephant and the spike is the perfect visual representation of all of us. We all have unconscious traumatic experiences that have created certain beliefs about ourselves. And a mindfulness practice, or mind mastery, as I like to call it in my program, is a way to delve deeper into that, to better understand yourself and how you're holding yourself back. Yeah, so I've got another story, but I don't want to say it because it's a little bit longer, and I'd like to go straight to kind of a Q&A. So before I do, I'll just say that what is the program that I try to teach people? In essence, it's a practice. It's a practice that can help you to develop yourself into becoming a better, new version of you, one that is more compassionate, more understanding, more self-aware, more courageous, more balanced, and more at peace with all of those things around you that you can't control, because at the end of the day, there's only one thing you can control, and that's you, if you know how. So I'd like to open up the floor to any questions, any shares. It doesn't have to be a question. Maybe you just want to share something that you resonated with regarding something that I said. And let's put it there. So you know what to do. If you have a question, feel free to put the hands up. I'll type something in the chat, and let's get the conversation going. There we go. Reem is the first to ask a question. Thank you, Reem. So I'll read it out for everyone. Thank you for such a great calming talk. I would just like to ask, would you say visualization is quite similar to the concept of law of attraction? I suppose to some extent, yes. In a simple kind of interpretation of law of attraction is convincing yourself of something to the point where you engage in your emotions, so that what happens, you start to attract these things into your life. So visualization could be interpreted as an example of what you would do if you're exploring the law of attraction. Sure, they're very similar in a way, but visualization has a lot more science to back it up than a lot of the practices of law of attraction. Although I'm a big fan of Abraham Hicks, I love her talks, and I'm very much inspired by a lot of what she shares, and I love her book. What is it called? Ask and It Is Given. I'm a huge fan of that. I love her concepts that she shares in that. I prefer to kind of delve a little bit more into the visualization aspect myself. Thank you, Reem, for the question. I appreciate that. Anyone else? Any shares, any questions? Samia, yes, please. If you could just unmute yourself. I think you're muted.
Hi, Yuri. I'm Sami
Hey.
Harayat. I'm a pranic healer also.
Mm-hmm.
And I've been going through anxiety lately because I'm doing multiple things at the same time. You know, we indulge ourselves in so many tasks, and then we ourselves don't know how to manage them.
Mm-hmm.
So the visualizing concept that you shared was really good, because I never did that because I do some meditation and all that, but after the meditation the thoughts come again, you know. It's just you are present in the moment, then later on you are triggered by someone or a call or a news headline or whatever. So yeah, the visualization concept was really, really helpful. I'm gonna try that.
All right, thank you. Thank you for sharing. I appreciate that. Thank you.
Thank you.
I would add to that perhaps that a mindfulness practice for me is more effective than just a meditation practice. Mindfulness in itself can be a meditation practice as well. And the reason for that is mindfulness isn't about trying to clear your mind. Mindfulness is about observing what is. And as you develop the skill of observing yourself and your thoughts, you get to that stage where you start seeing how your thinking, which is getting carried away, is what's potentially triggering your anxiety, as you've kind of touched on. your inability to choose what you think about, because these thoughts just pop into your mind unbidden. You didn't ask for that thought to pop in. You're not even thinking about that. Why is that entering your mind? And mindfulness is a great practice, a great meditation practice, if you choose to use it using meditation, to teach you how to pay attention. That's one of the first things you learn through through my mind mastery course. Is what I like to focus on is step one. Through the practice, you're learning how to see. You're learning how to watch unhelpful thoughts. And you go, wait a minute, why did that come in? I didn't ask for that thought to come in. And then you kindly and you gently shift your awareness to something else, something that is true in that moment, maybe your breath, because your breath is real. You are breathing, you can feel it. Maybe what you can feel in your body, clothes, the aircon, because that is true in that moment. You can't deny it. It is a present experience that you are perceiving. Maybe the sounds around the room, outside. So through a practice like that, you teach yourself to see unhelpful thoughts, to see thoughts that you didn't even ask to enter your mind, which don't serve you in that moment. And in doing so, you will catch the same things throughout your day. When you're overthinking, when you're trying to do too many things, you'll go, whoa, wait a minute. I'm getting caught up in the moment. My mind is just going, I need to do this, I need to do that. And then you will see. And that's the first step, to see. Because when you see, or at least you'll stop. When you stop, you cultivate presence. Because when you stop, you can only stop if you see it, of course. You will go, wait a minute, something's up. And then the next thing is to cultivate perspective, which is to look. And when you look, you go, oh, wait a minute, there I am again. Just getting carried away in this unconscious behavior, getting carried away in this conditioned behavior, because that's how you behaved most of your life. You've never thought about it, right? You've never questioned it. Why do I always behave like this? Why do I always react like this? As you practice mindfulness, you start seeing, you start questioning. And that's the first step, because once you see it the first time, you'll start seeing it more and more often. And the more you see it, the more you'll be able to step back and stop, and then work on what you need to do next, what serves you better, what helps you better in that moment. Because if you're feeling anxiety, if you continue working and if you continue trying to do everything, it's only going to exacerbate the anxiety. It's only going to make it worse. Thank you for that question. I appreciate it. All right, Pranav, thank you for this wonderful session. How would you suggest visualization for a mind that isn't exactly in the right space, overly anxious, etc.? What would be a good first step? Good question. So everything I've just described to Samiha is the best thing to do. You need to start with some sort of a program, whether it's with me or whether it's with someone else. You need to start with some sort of mental exercise, a mental program where you can start recognizing that it's a step-by-step process. You got to start with the basics, maybe 5 minutes of meditation. And the meditation isn't just for you to calm yourself. The meditation is for you to pay attention, is to see what is true, to recognize when thoughts invade your mind and to bring them back. Because you're developing, or at least you're trying to develop, the ability to be master of your mind, not slave to your thoughts. And within that, as you develop your meditation practice, perhaps your mind will become stronger to practice a visualization exercise. Because just like meditation, visualization is also pretty challenging. Because if you try to sit down and visualize the ball I was giving you guys as an example earlier, you might find it really hard. You might find thoughts popping to your mind. Oh, this is stupid. Oh, I can't do it. I need more time. I need calming music. Whatever it is, you're going to find countless thoughts popping to your head, which are now not serving you. So in essence, you're going to have to do baby steps. It's not a magic pill. It's not something you can just pop and go, yay, I've done it. Just like anything in life, in order to accomplish something great, there is some challenge associated with it. And it's going to be a consistent, committed practice that will bear fruits. I tell people this in my online course, which is, I think only 30% of people who actually start an online course ever complete it. And that's because of the lack of commitment. If you want to generate benefits from any practice that you engage in, you have to be willing to complete the course. You have to be willing to commit and to do everything as fully as possible. And then you will start to identify and recognize the benefits, and you'll start to feel the benefits. So in terms of your question, how would you suggest visualization for a mind that isn't exactly in the right space? I would say start from the beginning. Start with the basics. The basics that I cover in Mind Mastery, or you can go online to YouTube. You can type in what are the basics for mindfulness, basics for mindful meditation, and you start there. Of course, it's by makes it easier. If you just do one YouTube video, you might find some benefit, but then you don't know what to do next. So you have to kind of figure it out for yourself. That takes longer. That's why the idea of the Nourishers makes more sense. You have people who are experienced in this. You have people who've helped others who are dealing with the same stuff, and they have already set a program to help them to get through that process. So my suggestion would be to find a program that kind of fits with you, to connect with someone maybe that you resonate with, to tell them what your issue is, ask them if they can help you, and then start that program. Stay committed, stay consistent, and don't be too hard on yourself if you miss a day here or there, because that's important too. I always like to say, do your best, forget the rest. All right. Don't worry too much if one day is not good. That answers your question, Pranav. Okay, you're welcome. Thank you. All right. So I'm going to put it out there again. If anyone else is, oh, Reem, another question? Okay, cool. Another question. Do you have any tips on being more compassionate with yourself during the practice of mindfulness? Yes. Well, a part of mindfulness is, again, developing your self-awareness. So the more self-aware you become, the more aware you become of yourself, the more mindful you become, the more you will see when you are not being compassionate with yourself. You will identify it. And in recognizing it, as I mentioned to Samiha, in seeing that thought, you'll go, why am I being so mean to myself? Why am I not giving myself the time that I need for my own pleasure, for my, you know what, do that. So in being more mindful, you recognize when you're not being compassionate, and then you can engage in more practices that would allow you to do so. Allowing you to say, maybe, the program can even help you to recognize perhaps where you're not standing up for yourself. Something that a lot of women kind of struggle with is speaking their truth, being able to say what they want. That's something most men are comfortable with, especially in relationships. Men will say what they want. I want this. I want to do that. And most women will just concede. They'll just go, okay, I'll give him what he wants. So a part of the program is about becoming mindful enough if you're not standing up for yourself. If you're not saying, hey, you know what, I need some time for me. I want to spend some time with the garage because I need some self-care too. And the more you do that, the more you realize that is you being compassionate with yourself. That's you saying, hey, I've had a bad day. I've had a rough day. What can I do to treat myself? Because, things are never going to be perfect. And I'm going to make mistakes. And I still do myself. I still have days where I'm triggered, where I get frustrated. Fortunately, I'm a lot more aware to it. And then I have to acknowledge that, hey, that's okay. That's okay. We all make mistakes, but we are getting better. So again, it was a kind of a long-winded answer, and I'll try to summarize it in saying that through a practice of mind mastery or mindfulness, you'll become aware enough to recognize when you are holding yourself back, when you're being mean to yourself, when you're not being compassionate to yourself. And in those moments, you can choose differently. You can then choose to say, I'm going to do something compassionate for myself. I'm going to be kind to myself. I'm going to say kind words to myself because I recognize in this moment that what I'm saying to myself as I look in the mirror, what I'm saying to myself as I feel dejected because I haven't finished an assignment, doesn't serve me. And I need to change that. That's where all our power lies, is in self-awareness. Only if you are aware can you choose differently. But if you're not, Well, you keep choosing the same beliefs, the same thoughts, the same old behaviors and actions that haven't served you. Einstein said, insanity is doing the same thing over and over and over and over again, but expecting a different result. And that's what we do with our lives. We keep things about ourselves, we keep reacting in the same way, and we say, oh, that's just how I am, that's who I am. And then why we sit there wondering, why is my life not changing? Why do I keep dating the same kind of men? Why do I keep falling for the same kind of work jobs? Why do I keep, because there's something in you that you need to change. And you think it's something outside of you that needs to change. All right. You can't change the things outside of you. You can try. Most people do. That's called force, right? That's why wars happen, because they try to force their ideals. They try to force what they want on other people. And sometimes, yes, it works because they manipulate, they force it, and then they go, we got what we wanted. But that's not self-empowering. And it certainly doesn't empower the people that you inflicted that force upon. The real power lies here in learning how to conquer and master this, your heart, your mind, your self-awareness. Because then if you think of Gandhi as an example, regardless of what is happening around him, he continued to use peaceful protest. He stood up to the oppressors, the colonizers of the English, without violence, with simply saying, yes, they can beat me down, but it won't change how I choose to experience them. I still see them as loving beings. They don't know what they're doing. They're making these mistakes, but I will protest peacefully, and ultimately achieved independence for a country of hundreds of millions because of that understanding. He only had power over his interpretation and his perception of an experience outside of himself. He couldn't control what they wanted to do. He could only control himself with love and compassion and caring and trying. And eventually it had a massive impact. So, Reem, I hope that helps to answer your question. In that case, I think everyone has, oh, here we go, Durham. What activities would you suggest for mindfulness? Okay, well, there's mindfulness meditation. The more you practice a mindfulness meditation practice, the more you can understand what that means, and then you can use mindfulness all the time. Because as I mentioned, mindfulness is just about being aware of what's true in the moment. So if I'm brushing my teeth, mindfulness is about feeling the bristles on my teeth. It's about tasting the toothpaste. It's about tasting the bubbles as they kind of bubble over in my mouth, and I'm fully engaged and aware of that. That's mindfulness. It's not brushing your teeth thinking, oh shit, I've got to do this. Oh, I still have to do that. Oh, on my list. Oh man, I got to do, oh, my phone's ringing. Oh, look at all those messages while I'm brushing my teeth. That's not mindfulness. So the more mindful you become, you can make every mindful moment because you are aware that if this is what you're doing, this is what you should be experiencing. This is what you should be perceiving. And equally so, then it crosses over into all your relationships and all your experiences, because if you're sitting at the dinner table, having dinner with your children, you're tasting the food, you're listening to your son or your daughter, and you're fully engaged in what they're saying. And you're not sitting there thinking, oh, I have to finish that assignment. Sorry, son, I don't have time now. That's not what you're doing. You are engaged in that moment. And that, again, in itself can be a mindful practice. But you can only do all of these things if you have started to develop that ability to be more mindful, to understand what it means, and to have the essence of it kind of built up as a basic foundation so that you remember it throughout your day. Oh, yes, I'm not being mindful now. Let me be mindful in this moment. Oh, I'm not being mindful now. Let me be mindful in this moment. So what activities would you suggest? You have to start with at least 5 minutes of mindfulness meditation every day until that skill kind of becomes a part of how you experience every moment. You start to become aware of when you're not being completely aware of the moment. And then you can bring yourself back, bring yourself back, bring yourself back, and connect to what's happening then and there. I hope that answers your question, Darren. Basically, anything can be a mindful practice. if you're doing it with awareness. Literally everything. Okay. And Reem, I appreciate that. Thank you. I'm glad you found it very interesting. It's 6:30 now, so we're kind of done. If anyone has any final questions, feel free to do so now. You're welcome, Darren. You guys know what to do if you're interested in exploring something more deeply with me, if this interests you, if you want to perhaps connect with me. I have like a free 30-minute call because maybe you have some more personalized questions in terms of what you want to kind of explore or at least work with. And is that something that I can assist you with or support you with? And you can ask those questions using the 30-minute free call. Alternatively, all the other options are on my Nourishers page, which I know Miriam will probably share with everyone individually as you all connected through her. So feel free to wait for that. Alternatively, maybe she'll share it here. Otherwise, take a little breath and just soak it all in, which I'm doing now. I realized that I was talking a lot. I'm just going to take a moment of silence and be okay with have to with noise. And I'll end off with saying thank you for joining me on this mindful moment. And I hope to connect with one or many or all of you in future. Thank you so very much. Miriam has shared the website, The Nourishers. You would just search for me, I suppose. That's Yuri Nunes. Yes, thank you, Reem. I hope you have a blissful night as well. Thank you very much. Take care, everyone. Thank you so much for making the time to be here today. Got some benefit from this. Till next time, that's it from us. Thank you so very much. Ciao for now.